Welcome back, everyone. All right, we talked about a bunch of stuff, right? Now we need to understand or know that there's different types of antennas. In this next lecture, this lecture that I'm going to leave you with, okay, I'm going to be talking about, different types of antenna, polarization, electromagnetic waves. Not deep, not deep. You're not getting too deep into that, but you need to understand what would happen. All right, and I'll get into the explanation in this particular presentation. But you need to understand this, and then pretty much I tell you there's only two. You have omnidirectional and directional. Those are the ones you're going to be dealing with. All right, now, are there 3 billion antennas out there? Yes. Can we talk about each one? No, or if we do, I guess we can spend a whole 48 hours talking about different types of antennas you can use for different situations, okay? But anyway, so now we get into the characteristics of the antennas because it does matter in your wireless network. This is just one of the many variables in wireless that you need to pay attention to. And hopefully the lecture will clear that up. I'll see you inside. All right, so here we are in the wireless LAN antenna characteristics and obviously types, right? We have different types of antenna we're going to discuss. That's why you see that little baby there freaking out, right? So like it says right there, to provide good wireless LAN coverage in the building or outdoor areas between both locations, you're going to be dealing with a lot of different variables. And that with wireless, that is so true. Office buildings have little cubicles, and cubicles vary between offices, right? Every cubicle is the same. In hospitals, you have long hallways that you're going to be dealing with in order, to send information back and forth. You're going to see a lot of APs. If you ever walked into a hospital, not that you want to be there, but if you're doing this for IT or you've been in there just, as visiting somebody or what have you, or good news if somebody's having a baby or something like that, you look and see all the access points and the types of antennas that they have there. They're more directional antennas because they have these long hallways that they need to reach, okay, in order to get to the other AP. You also have big open lobby areas, all right? So, and again, lobby areas may differ. It could be a hotel lobby area, it could be a restaurant lobby area, it could be a school lobby area. So depending on where you're at, all right, there's a lot of different scenarios, furniture, plants, steel, all these different types of variables, of furniture, of objects that exist in our environment, okay? It's going to mess around with the signal, or in this case that we're talking about the magnetic or interference or the radio frequency interferences as these things be emitted out. Classrooms, especially imagine outdoors. One thing is a sports arena, all right, and another thing is an outdoor park. Imagine an outdoor park trying to get everybody in an outdoor park. Think of a very large park that you're aware of, and how would you cover that area? Because you have essentially two types of antennas: omnidirectional and directional. All right, and depending, you're not going to use a little. Like when you buy at the store, you buy your little wireless routers, and you have these little omnidirectional antennas that can only go up to 300 feet. Well, you're going to need a lot of those to go around. So you may have a bigger antenna, like that's why we have cellular, those big radio tower antennas that they have other antennas on there which actually emit, and the higher they're up, the better it is, and the power that's being outputted through there is going to help a lot. Remember, when we're talking about sending information, it's that carrier wave. We're dealing with the amplitude and the frequency of the antenna. The more frequent, the clearer the signal, but also you want that amplitude. You want a big amplitude in order to go far and be a strong type of antenna where, hey, nothing's going to interfere with it, hopefully. But that has to do with the frequency as well. So you have different characteristics of antennas. And again, now one will fit on your environment, all right, or your scenario. Not everything is the same. Not everything is cookie cutter. That's why the physical site surveys, I haven't said that enough, and your radio site surveys are so important. And because that's going to determine not only the placement of these devices, but what type of antennas are you going to use, okay, in your environment, all right, and also the power that you're going to emit, all right, or that you're going to have. Do you turn it up more? All right, do you turn it down so it doesn't leak out? All right, to the, maybe you work in a shopping center, and you have, let's say you have a school within a shopping center. You're not a standalone building. You have stores next to you. You don't want your wireless to be leaking out to them. So these are things that you need to think of, and it's really important, especially with the antennas, that you place them in the properly. They're not pointing up into the ceiling. They're pointing down into the hallways or classrooms or whatever. All right, they're not that far apart. You have that 15% overlap that we've talked about. So when it says here that the radiation pattern of the antennas will change, and so will your coverage area. So that's why you need that spectrum analyzer. You need to see what patterns are there so you can get this, what's called the lobe, right? Again, remember way back when we started this, imagine throwing a pebble into water, right? A pond, a river, a sink, whatever. Okay, the bathtub, and you're gonna see that ripple effect that comes out. Well, that's the same thing that happens to omnidirectional antennas. All right, so you need to see how far those ripples go out, all right, in order for you to create that 15% overlap, and will there be anything in the way to interfere it? All right, so these are the things you need to look at, and that's why wireless site surveys are extremely important. All right, and because these lobes, these radiation patterns, will change depending on the shape and size and type of antenna. All right, now we see here antenna gain is normally comparison to one antenna. That was a typo, don't freak. One antenna against what's called an isotropic antenna. It's non-existent. It's just something we use as the perfect type of antenna, right? That we would use. It's not a real antenna. It's something like, hey, this is the utopia of antennas that we want to use. So, we go to this isotropic antenna. It's the ideal, perfect, and almost impossible to construct, right? But it's the easiest, most basic antenna that we can use to explain the concepts of electromagnetic waves. And that's what it is. That's a carrier wave. Because all these antennas, that's what they emit, electromagnetic waves, which are your carrier waves that are going out with the modulation on it, the intelligence, the data that's going to be put onto these electromagnetic waves. So that's why every piece of electrical device that we use emits EMI. That's why when we do wired cabling, which is low voltage, we don't want to put them next to high voltage. Right? We want to keep that away because the high voltage will drown out the low voltage, and then you will get all that interference, and you're not going to, you're going to get a lot of attenuation, a lot of bad packets being dropped, all these different things that can happen. So, and I experienced this even way before I started doing IT, where we used to do surveying, and I think I've said this before. We need to triangulate positions within the hundredths. I mean, it's very small, minute measurements for the county in Miami-Dade, Florida. And when we do that, we had to triangulate. How do we do that? We did that with satellites, right? We had a pole that satellites would come down to, but we also had an antenna at our base station that would send signals out to our device as well. So it would create this sort of a triangle and triangulated position based on radio and satellite. Well, the problem was that since we didn't have a proprietary frequency, and the power that was being used, it was used like a car battery that was being used to emit power out, was not strong enough to do it, let's say, in a normal neighborhood, because you have power lines, you had, the telephone lines, all these different things that would cause EMI. And we were so brilliant that we would put the actual antenna on a 30-foot rod, okay, 30-foot rod, but right next to a power line. That was just brilliance on our behalf. And then the EMI from those power lines would definitely cut off. We couldn't go a block without losing signal, and we couldn't triangulate a position. Once we obviously changed the position of the base station, or not really the base station, the actual antenna itself, okay, and we used a marine battery, then we were able to emit further down, about a half mile down, because you still need to think about, one, we didn't have a proprietary frequency, so we were able to hear if we would take a device that will look at and will hear interference, you will hear other people actually talking on that. And then on top of that, you had trees, you had buildings, all these different things that are surrounding us. So, but at least we got half a mile in a 360-degree circle, so we at least can go out that far. Okay, so that was pretty good, and then we can move base stations as we go along. And it's the same way when we're doing wireless LANs. All right, so if you have an antenna that you want to, you have your wireless controller, you have your router, and your router is connected to your wireless controller. Your wireless controller is going to be emitting information out to your APs. Well, you need to put maybe antennas in the way, or that will repeat that signal, will capture a signal and send it to the APs. Okay, that exists. Now I say, well, as we use MIMO. We use MIMO technology. We have multiple antennas, 6 antennas. But one of the things that you need to think about when we're using MIMO or using multiple antennas, like the Google router, I think it's called Uno or something like that. The Google router is awesome. I used it. It had I think it was 10 or 12 antennas. But you can have that multiple signal that's being sent out and cancel each other out. So if you are in a hospital setting or in a setting like schools where they have long hallways, passageways, whatever the case may be, you may want to use directional antennas because the radiation pattern, the EMI that's being emitted, which is eventually the electromagnetic waves that are being emitted, that type of radiation pattern will be a little bit more directed. It will be like a beam. You'll see here in a second. All right, it will be straightforward and it will go directly to where it needs to go. That's why when you use directional antennas, they can go further than omnidirectional antennas, where it's 360 degrees, like that ripple effect. All right, and then depending again on the frequency and the power being outputted, a lot of things can interfere with it. Where directional antennas, since they're being face to face, pointing to a particular direction, that's why they can move a lot further and less things would interfere with that. All right, but it all depends on your scenario, and that's why you got to do your surveys. Now here we have a normal omnidirectional antenna. This is something that you should be very familiar with. Let me get my little. Well, here you got my pointer. This is something that we're very familiar with. We either have it behind our desktops, or we have it on our, on our routers themselves. They look like this. All right, and there's two different planes, elevation, horizontal. All right, that they're emitting. These are their radiation patterns. They emit this way and that way. And take a look at this picture. Now imagine you have this router. You're, let's say, in a store. Okay, any store, I don't care. All right, whatever, clothing store, whatever it is. Let's use clothing so we don't have no electrical devices. And you want to be able for your registers or for maybe, guests, wireless, whatever, so they can go ahead and use it. So you need to put these access points all around. Okay, let's say you have 3 or 4, depending, how big your store is. And where are you going to put these? Now, you obviously not going to put it, on a rack somewhere or, somewhere where people can get to it. You're going to put these things on the ceiling. Now, you're not going to put it where the antennas are this right here, this pole, right? This antenna right here is not going to be going into the ceiling. Let's say you have a false ceiling, you have those ceiling tiles. You're not going to put them up into that. You're going to put the router slash AP, slash bridge slash repeater slash whatever the hell it is, okay? It's going to be pointing down. The antennas need to be pointing down because you can see that it will emit an elevation, right? It will emit it vertically and horizontally, right? And you want it to go into the store, not into the ceiling. So you turn them upside down. All right, and now, there's different APs that you purchase that you don't actually see antennas like this anymore. All right, it's just a circular, and then you just put it on the ceiling, and that's it. And I've seen these in supermarkets lately. I don't know if I told you or not. I don't remember if I did. Public supermarket was one of them where I just walked in one day and I noticed, hey, they hang poles and they're like maybe 12 feet above, they're 12 feet from the floor up or maybe 15 feet. I don't think no basketball stars coming in there trying to, touch it or whatever the case may be, but they're out of reach of the normal everyday user. And the normal everyday user is not going to care what that is. They're there to buy food, right? But IT people do care, and they're like, hey, look at that. All right. And it's throughout the store. And obviously they're for their registers, and they're more towards the front of the store than they are to the rear of the store, because this is for the registers. These are for the stock people, people that take inventory. They can go ahead and use wireless devices that will communicate with that. That's the whole point. Could you imagine back in the day without this, you had to write everything down, use vacuum tubes and paper and all that? No, this is supposedly a paperless society where even in supermarkets, warehouses, whatever, you scan an item, bookstores, you scan an item, look at this. Yes, Laz worked at a bookstore, okay? And when the truck would come in and they would offload everything, we would scan it in the back. But then once you scan it, the wireless technology did not exist where it will automatically pick it up in the register. So you literally need to take that scanner, bring it to the front, plug it into the register, and download that information. So if somebody's trying to purchase a book, you'll have the latest and greatest. But look at this scenario. Imagine as it's coming off the truck, you have somebody scanning these devices, and as you scan it wirelessly, it goes directly into the register, because somebody could be coming in, purchasing a particular book, but your register, since you haven't downloaded it, old method, it's not there, but it really is. It's in the back because it's just come off the truck. But if you scan it, and as you have the wireless communication, right? You can go ahead and automatically, boom, it goes to the register. Hey, yes, we do have it. It just came off the truck right now. Let me send somebody in the back and get it for you, so you don't lose a sale. So this is what wireless technology brings in. It's very important. But the antennas play a big role in this, because if you do have wireless technology, that you can do that back and forth. But if you have omnidirectional antennas and you have them pointing into the ceiling, or you have them so far away from the registers, okay, or you don't have enough of them that's going to send the signal out to where it needs to be, that's going to be an issue. Because you take a look at the right here, look at the radiation pattern, right? Once you leave outside this lobe that you see right here, that's it, man. You're not getting anything. You're not getting a damn thing, okay? You're losing, you see here negative 10, as you keep getting negative 5, whatever, that's going to be horrible. All right, so you see this is the maximum outer range right here. You leave that range, you're not going to get any signal. So these are the things that you need to be concerned with when, if you're using omnidirectional, which a lot of people do. All right, and again, the power that's being emitted. Now if you buy business grade equipment, you should be able to control that. All right, and careful, because I think you can only go as far as 1 watt. All right, you do not want to overlap somebody else's frequency. Don't get crazy. All right, and try and get it. You need to have a proprietary frequency, which wireless does. Okay, they work in 5 gigahertz, 2.4 gigahertz range. So you stay within that, and you'll have a stopping point as far as you can turn up the power or you can reduce the power so it doesn't leak out or what have you. But these are the things you need to pay attention to. All right, here you see beam width. Take a look at these lobes. They're completely different. You see here's the main beam in this case. All right, you have side lobes as well that get created, but they're not as far. But the main beam, you see, is pointing like this would be, let's say, like a dual antenna in a hospital that we use. It's 2 antennas back to back. All right, and they would emit that signal. Look how far out they go. All right, and they're directional. They're directional. They're more. That's why it's called a beam. All right, so it's not as wide, so it can go further out unless things are going to interfere with it. If you're outside this, then that's an issue. You see here, minus 3 dB if you're on this side. But the whole point of it is that you're pointing it to an AP. And normally directional antennas, that's what they're for. Okay, and an example of that, think of, and I've used this example before, think of DirecTV. DirecTV, when they're setting up your antennas, you got that guy up on your roof, and he's got this antenna that he's setting up. He's got a particular azimuth and elevation, so he can point it to a particular satellite that he can get it. Well, how does he know he's actually pointing to it? Okay, he's got the azimuth, right? The degree setting. All right, and he's got the elevation, which is numbers right on the antenna. You can vertically go up or down. But how does he know? Well, he's got software that he installs on your TV. And when you hear that sound, beep, 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 you know, he's got a very high sound. Then when that goes up to a certain range, say get 90%, 95%, okay, we're good. So he locks it down at that particular elevation and on that particular azimuth, left or right. So he knows he's pointing to it. The only problem with, and this is outdoors, obviously, direct TV or when using satellites to get your information, is that if you have cloud, rain, okay, fog, all the trees, all right, that's going to be an issue. That's going to interfere with that beam. Even though it's directional, it's going to interfere with that beam. All right. And again, they can create different radiation patterns depending on the antenna. Look at all these different types of beam width. This even looks like an omnidirectional right here, but it isn't. All right. So you gotta be very careful when it's not just, hey, just buy this and that and this and that and this and that. No, no. It all depends, just like anything else, on your network. It's the network needs. And wirelessly, you got to take a look at where exactly you're setting this up. What type of building, what do they have, running in there that can cause issues? Imagine going inside a Radio Shack, okay? Everything in there is electrical, right? Or Best Buy, well, not Best Buy, because they have a combination of both. But imagine going to a particular store or company that just deals with, high voltage equipment, or they sell whatever. They have a lot of, power generators throughout the building and what have you. So these are things you need to be concerned with when you are doing this. So again, depending on the antenna that you are going to get, you need to do your research. I mean, if I were to do just a class on antennas, it would be just a course on antennas, because that's how many antennas we can have. From outdoors to indoors. Just that's a generalized statement right there. I mean, there's so many outdoor antennas and so many indoor antennas, all right, that can go ahead and transmit signal to reach your AP, so you can go ahead and get signal and do what you need to do. So these are the things that you need to be worried about. And there's another example, all right? You see the vertical up and down and the horizontal side to side, what you're getting, all right? And these are the measurements you need to take when you're doing your radio site survey. So you know exactly where these antennas, these APs need to be placed, so you can gain access. So those APs can give you wireless access to wherever it is that you want to do all your wireless devices in your network. And again, depending on the size of the area that you are covering, I can tell you, one campus, uh, it was Linksys wireless routers, those all in one, and it was 3 Linksys routers that we actually were able to gain wherever we went in the school, pretty much, even to the parking lot. We were able still to print and go online and stuff like that through the actual wireless routers that we had, that we actually set up, myself and the students, set up within that particular campus. It was a 1-floor campus, all right, but they were dead zones. So they can notice that. If you were to go, let's say, to the very back and to the left of it, that's where the IT department was. You could not get any signal at that particular corner. There was no signal to it. So there were certain areas you couldn't get, or the signal was very low. But generally, in the general area, let's say you're in the, I forget what it was called, where everybody sits down, in the front of the campus and drinks your coffee, whatever. I forgot what that was called. The atrium. Is it the atrium? I don't know. Where they sit down and drink whatever. They can go on their laptops and do whatever they need to do, or their cell phones, whatever, and connect wirelessly. So again, you need to analyze what is the needs of your network and decide what type of antennas are you going to use. It's going to be completely different from a hospital than it will be to a lobby, right? And that's what your goal is, because one will be omnidirectional and one will be more likely directional, or a combination of both on where you want to have this. But the importance is and people don't understand, we talk about EMI, but it's really polarization. It's somewhat the same. But you have, linear, okay, which is vertical, circular, okay, which is the other one on this one right here, okay, or you have right or left hand, okay, circular polarization, which is this right here. So you gotta be very careful. And this is what we were getting into when we were surveying. We didn't even pay attention and we didn't care. We didn't know. We set up, or the person in charge said, hey, we can't do this, right? They have their PhD. They should know what the hell they're doing. We can't put an antenna right next to a power line. Hello. Uh, that is admitting there's polarization, right? There's high voltage going through there, which creates this right here. So it's interfering with our little antenna that's using our car battery, trying to emit a signal to our antennas, our backpacks that we were carrying around, to be able to triangulate a position, half mile away. That wasn't happening. Not only was our signal being killed right off the bat when it was being sent out, that's why we couldn't go a block without losing signal. Until somebody said, hey, wait a minute. We're too close to a power line and let's try a marine battery. But obviously, the frequency, we still had an issue with that. That's why we only went to half a mile, because everybody and their mother, and people are going to work, let's say between 8 o'clock in the morning till 10. You have all these cars passing by, everybody's going to work, everybody's talking to their loved ones or whoever, okay, or their bosses. I'm coming in, I'm coming in, I'm coming in, I'm on my way. All right. But there all those cellular signals and waves, and just the power lines, telephone lines, the cars themselves, AM, FM, okay, all these things are just waves in the air. They're interfering with our, wow, sounds like a song. Put your hand in it. No, all these waves in the air that are going to go ahead and have an issue, and we're going to have a lot of interference. And that's one in the next lecture. That's one of the things we're going to talk about. It's the interference that we have within a home, within an office, within a building, in the street. Okay, all these things. And one of the things that I've noticed, I don't know if you have, take a look at your local stores that you walk into. If you're in IT, obviously, all right, take a look at it. Do you have wireless signal when you go in? And one of the things that I mentioned earlier in this course is the little device called the Skyroam. All right, that you connect to that Skyroam wirelessly, and then that Skyroam finds any cellular service in its area and gives you access to online or be able to make phone calls. All right, and that saved my ass in Europe big time. All right, so there's devices out there. I mean, to talk about all the devices that are out there, it's not impossible, but yeah, we'll be here talking for a couple hours, and that we're going to describe every last single device that we can use. So basically, understand the concept and the issues in wireless and their antennas. Like I said, in wireless, the size counts. So, and the power being emitted and the type of antenna and frequency. All these things they play a role in being able to communicate with each other and not overlap. And we talked about modulation, that if we're using OFDM, which is the newest modulation type, which creates this phase shift keying, okay, that's going to increase our clarity, right? It may decrease some distance, but it will definitely increase the clarity and the speed of the signal going out, okay? So keep this in mind. This is very, very important. EMI, RFI, all right, and definitely, what they call polarization, terminology for test. But yeah, don't put your wireless access points or antennas or all-in-one routers next to some high voltage device like your TV at home, or other wireless routers that are not yours, or next to the generator, because you're just going to you're killing yourself. You're working against yourself. Okay, so this is something to keep in mind. Remember spectrum analyzers, or you may have a laptop that has an actual built-in software that can do this for you. But never forget that. All right. All right. So I guess I'll see everybody in the next one.